Hello and welcome to the viewers of this video. This is the Orange Fan here, bringing you another entry for the episode Recap and Thoughts category. This video will be dedicated to the A segment of episode 49 of the Loud House, Read Aloud. We begin this segment with Lincoln telling the rest of his family about a reading challenge that is being held at the Royal Woods Library. This challenge composes of various families trying to read as many books as possible, and all the members of a family must read at least one book in order for the family to be eligible to take part in the challenge. And the winning family will be rewarded with an entire night to themselves at a restaurant called Spunk E, Pigeon, which is a reference to Chuck E. Cheese. And like Chuck E. Cheese, Spunk E Pigeon is a pizza restaurant, and the Loud family are definitely on board for a night of pizza. But there's one family member who doesn't seem to be interested in the challenge, and that family member is Lola, who dismisses reading as being boring. When the Loud family go to the library to borrow some books to read, Lisa actually disguises herself as a cowboy. She's wearing a cowboy hat, she's wearing a fake mustache, and she's talking in a southern accent and using words like partner and y'all in her vocabulary. This is because Lisa has a fine for overdue library books, so she's put on the disguise to fool the librarian, whose name is revealed to be Weta. When the Loud family return home, Lincoln notices that Lola only picked up some stickers, and she still doesn't want to read. Lincoln reiterates, though, that all the family members must read at least one book in order for the family to be eligible, which means if Lola doesn't read, then she pretty much is dooming the rest of the family from winning the night of pizza, the night at Spunk E Pigeons. But Lola still doesn't care and insists that she won't read. And so the rest of the Loud family are figuring out what they're going to do about this. While some extreme methods are brought up, Lincoln suggests that they simply try to show Lola how fun reading can be. And so we see various scenes where at least one member of the Loud family is reading a book within Lola's presence and talking about how great reading is in front of her, but Lola still refuses to read a book. Eventually, Lincoln thinks that maybe it's because they're reading books that are within their own interests, but not within Lola's interests. So the next scenes we see are Lincoln trying to persuade Lola into reading books that would be up her alley or be part of her interests, yet Lola still refuses to read a book. That is until Lincoln pretty much bars her from using the bathroom, saying that he's not going to let up until Lola reads at least one book. And Lola finally caves into his demands and takes the book. So later on, we see that the Loud family have returned to the library. The time limit is almost up for the challenge. It's the last day. They don't exactly specify how long the challenge is, but we know that it ends at 5:00 p.m. on this particular day now that it is in the segment. So the Loud family head to the library to show that they're eligible for the challenge, and they've read over 200 books, which is quite impressive. And Weta decides to test or quiz all of the family members to make sure that they actually read their books, and most of the members, pretty much of the family, pass with flying colors. But then Weta remembers she has to quiz Lola. And Lola, though, yeah, while she's giving some weird answers, eventually Lola admits that she didn't read the book like she said she would. And so Weta says that the whole family can't compete unless Lola reads one book. And once again, the family are furious that Lola is pretty much not being a team player. Lincoln realizes that there's about 2 hours left before the challenge officially ends. So he tells the rest of the family that he'll try to get Lola to read at least one book before the 2 hours are up. So the rest of the family leave the library, leaving Lincoln and Lola there. And Lincoln drags Lola into the library while she's kicking and screaming. And this time, Lincoln wants to actually see Lola read the book in front of him to make sure that she doesn't lie like before. But Lola tries to distract Lincoln briefly and tries to escape, but Lincoln chases her all around the library and gets into a scuffle or a fight with her. And during the fight, Lincoln rhetorically questions Lola if it's really so hard for her to read one measly book. But much to Lincoln's surprise, she answers yes, and it's not a sarcastic yes, it's a sincere yes. And Lola finally admits that reading is hard for her to do, and that she would like to read some of the books that Lincoln suggested, but because it's too hard for her, she doesn't want to try. Lincoln, though, says that he'll help Lola to read at least one book so she can see how fun reading can be. So they go into a quiet, secluded room in the library and they begin to read a book. And Lola's having a hard time sounding out the words, but Lincoln tries to help her out along the way. And apparently their chasing around and scuffle took about an hour, so they have about an hour to read this one book before the challenge is over. And then eventually it is 5 o'clock, but Lola isn't finished with the book, but Lincoln tells her not to worry about that and to just finish the book. And Lola does read an entire book, but it's 5:30, so a half hour after the challenge has ended. And the rest of the family have returned, and they're furious about how long it took. Similar to Sleuth or Consequences, Lincoln tries to take the fall for Lola on her behalf, and while the family starts to disparage Lincoln for costing them the challenge, Lola quickly confesses that it wasn't Lincoln's fault, it was her own fault because she had a hard time reading. But the rest of the family takes sympathy on Lola's situation, and they are glad to know that Lola at least is starting to overcome her difficulties with reading. And Lisa ends up ditching her disguise, which leads to Weta finding out who Lisa really is. So now Lisa's trying to escape from Weta over the fines that she owes the library. Later on at the Loud house, most of the family members are watching TV and the Spunk E Pigeons commercial, disappointed that they weren't able to take part in the challenge. But Lenny comments that the commercial was so real she can smell pizza. But it turns out someone really is cooking pizza. They head upstairs and they find out that Lola is actually cooking pizza thanks to they're like those like toy ovens or something, like you can actually cook food in those ovens, but kids get to use them sort of thing. Or that's what Lola has, and she's been cooking pizza because thanks to her now having a better appreciation for reading, or it not being so hard as it was for her originally, she's actually using a cookbook to make pizza, and the rest of the family actually enjoy the pizza. They think it tastes about as good as Spunk E Pigeon's pizza, if not better. But the segment ends with the rest of the family seeing Lisa continuing to try and escape Weta over the overdue library fine. Now, this segment stands out because Well, it's another segment where Lola gets to be the spotlight character, and it does portray Lola in a more sympathetic light, which, like I said before, that's a good thing because Lola, as well as Lori and Lynn, are probably the Loud sisters that have the most notorious reputation among certain fans and viewers. So this one did show Lola in a better light, or at least made her more sympathetic. So I consider that to be a good thing. And this had to do with Lola having difficulties reading. Now, admittedly, that was a bit of a surprise because there have been previous segments that shown that Lola has been able to read before. Like the Ties That Bind showed Lincoln Ties That Bind showed that Lola was able to read the pancakes that Lincoln was making, or the message that Lincoln had at one point during Ties That Bind, and Lola had commented on reading some of her siblings' diaries or journals in other segments, so that confused a lot of viewers. I suppose it's possible that this might have happened before those segments chronologically, although other fans have pointed out that being in as many pageants as Lola has been, surely there must have been some challenges that would have involved literacy in some capacity. So, although some fans did note that in this segment, Lola's exact words weren't that she couldn't read, just that reading was hard for her. So, maybe reading smaller things like a card or a message, like maybe that's easy for Lola to read, but an entire book might be harder for her. Again, it's not too clear exactly what she meant by that, and it has caused a bit of confusion for some fans, but I guess the message was still pretty heartwarming, though, that Lincoln was willing to help Lola have an easier time reading, and he was willing to forget about the contest if it meant that Lola's could have an easier time reading. And this led us to, the part that was similar to Sleuth or Consequences, where Lincoln was willing to take the fall for one of his sisters for something. But the difference here is that while in Sleuth or Consequences, Lucy pretty much let Lincoln take the fall for her after he did so, Lola actually stopped Lincoln and confessed that she was the reason why the contest, why they couldn't win the contest. And like I mentioned before with Sleuth or Consequences, the only issue I had with Lucy not confessing with her fault in the conflict that went on was that I felt it was a wasted opportunity for Lucy to learn a lesson, or just another character besides Lincoln to learn an important lesson. And that's why I appreciated this ending where Lola actually confessed to her family instead of just letting Lincoln take the fall. They actually capitalized on the chance to have a character besides Lincoln learn a lesson in the segment. And that was greatly appreciated, especially given Lola's usual unflattering reputation. It was especially nice to see Lola have some kind-hearted moments. And at least the fact that the family did get to have some pizza afterwards because Lola's progression with reading, or the progress she was making with reading becoming easier for her, allowed her to read some cookbooks to figure out how to make pizza. The Loud family still managed to still get something good out of this, while despite not winning the challenge. Oh, and as far as the other families go, the Yates family was shown to be one of the families participating in this reading challenge. I mentioned that before. The Yates family don't actually show up again in season 2 after future tense, but they are referenced, and this is the segment where they're referenced. So Again, that's another minor serialized element in the show, the Yates family being in the area of Royal Woods. So that leaves me with hope that the Yates family will return in season 3 because, like I mentioned before, I think they're characters with a lot of potential. So it would be nice if they returned so they could realize that potential. Otherwise, I did find Lisa disguising herself around the librarian to be pretty hilarious. I thought that was pretty funny, but there you go. Overall, I did like this segment. It had some funny moments, had a nice lesson to it, and it had some heartwarming moments in there as well. Although, again, like I admit, like the oddity about Lola having difficulty reading has caused some confusion for some fans, whether it's because of its place, maybe it's earlier in the chronology of the series, or again, maybe it's just that Lola, maybe just longer forms of reading is more difficult for Lola compared to shorter forms. But I guess that's for fans and viewers to try and figure out the confusion about that, I guess. But otherwise, yeah, I thought this segment was still overall a good one despite some confusion. And there you go for the A segment. As to be expected, we'll be discussing the B segment next. Take care and until next time.